All right, folks, you know what it's time for? It's time for the Malzberg Panel. And joining us on the panel, our friend Seton Motley, of course, founder of Less Government, and radio host and author of The Big Black Lie, Kevin Jackson. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Always great to talk to you. All right, so we just spoke to Mark Thiessen of the Washington Post and the American Enterprise Institute, who was former chief speechwriter for George W. Bush. We're talking about this report that the Senate committee voted to make public, and Dianne Feinstein is going around and Nancy Pelosi going around saying basically that, you know, Bush and Cheney are criminals in a sense, and they lied to us, and this interrogation, enhanced interrogation, which they call torture, never helped solve anything or get any information regarding anything. And Mark Thiessen, who worked in the administration and wrote a book on everything that it did do for us, says that it's all a lie. So I'll ask you guys the same question I asked him. Seton, what do you think the motivation is behind them going after this enhanced interrogation at this point?
Well, it's omnidirectional. One, if they're talking about the Bush administration, they're not talking about the Obama administration. That's helpful. Two, they owe their base something on this, because remember, the first executive order Barack Obama signed was closing Gitmo. They still haven't closed Gitmo. So the wacko left base wants a pound of flesh on this, and this is their attempt to give them that. Three, I think they're still genuinely upset about this, and they're embarrassed because, as has come to light and has been known for years now, they were briefed as early as 2002 about what was going on, and at least the people on the on the security panels, the committees in the House and Senate. So they're trying to take focus off of the Obama administration's failings in this regard and broken promises in this regard. Two, talk about anything besides Obamacare or the entire world going up in flames.
Right.
And three, they want to lock down something for the base to feel about to vote in November.
Right, and I guess, Kevin, that's something for the base. The number three item that Seton alluded to is bring up, evidence that you're suffering from Bush derangement syndrome again, and reinvigorate that crowd.
Well, I think you can sum it up in 2 words: midterm elections. Anything, as my other panelists has talked about, anything to get the attention off of what's really happening. I mean, this is a moot conversation. This is like if you've got a disease, you better hope a celebrity has your disease, because that's the only way to get a cure. These people don't care if our military men and women are captured, and you pull an Allen West and say, I'm going to put a bullet in your brain unless you tell me how to go get them. But they act as if they care about the military. But let one of their children get kidnapped. Let a soldier be a member of their family, and watch all that they'll do to get these people out of it. The fact that we're talking about the idea of what would you be willing to do to protect America if you knew someone was going to drop a dirty bomb or do something that was going to kill millions of Americans or thousands of Americans or whatever, the fact that we're saying we won't go to the nth degree is patently ridiculous. There's very few people in this country who wouldn't move mountains to protect their family and their friends, certainly their children. And we're talking about something like this. Not to mention, Morelli, the former CIA director, recently said, how do you think we've protected this country to begin with?
Right.
You got a 6,300-page report where they've not questioned anybody in the CIA. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, Morelli and Brennan, they both defended it. And, it's interesting because I don't know if the ticking bomb scenario is addressed, Seton, and that's always been fascinating to me. When Barack Obama stands there, and this is at the beginning, and when he says it's not who we are, it doesn't do any good, it only brings more terrorism, blah, 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 blowing smoke in someone's face, sleep deprivation, sticking their head underwater. By the way, all things that our soldiers go through in training. I always wondered, and I always wanted to be able to ask the question, or have a media member ask the question, God forbid, if we knew that this guy that we had was going to blow up a school, or knew where the school was going to be blown up, would you still not stick his head underwater if you thought it could give us the answer? I'd love to hear that question put to one of these guys, especially Obama.
Well, that reminds me of the question in the 1988 presidential debate when Michael Dukakis was asked, would you want the death penalty for a man who raped your wife? And he said no. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, that destroyed him. Absolutely.
That destroyed him. That just utterly destroyed him. He looked like he was the automaton American before Al Gore. But I'm not sure where you want to come down on torture, but I will quote Rush Limbaugh and say, if you can do it 37 times to one person, it's not torture.
Right, and I don't think any of this anything of this.
We waterboarded. And again, if you ask Osama bin Laden, would you prefer what happened to you or to be waterboarded? Guess which he'd choose.
Yeah, and it's funny, Kevin. It's always been amazing to me that this president has gone way above and beyond anything George W. Bush ever did with regard to killing Americans overseas and the drone use. And I'm not saying I'm against any of that, but the drone use and the targeting of terrorists and winding up killing their families as well. But don't stick a guy's head underwater to try to get information to save American lives, but blow them away without trial or just because we think he's in the House, no matter who else we kill. He's doing that more than Bush ever did. And, of course, the left and Dianne Feinstein and the rest of them are silent on that.
Yeah, of course, because it's the typical liberal double standard. But as I said before, there's no question. I mean, I would ask you, poll anybody you want and ask them, what would you do if your children were kidnapped? What lengths would you be willing to go to? What do you think Obama would do if, while traveling in China, Malia and Sasha were kidnapped? What do you think the lengths would be that he and Michelle, and what type of lengths would they go to? These, to me, are questions that don't really. We talk about them in terms of, let's have the world look at us in a particular way. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to really protect this country, you're willing to do whatever it takes. And I think we need to stop being disingenuous about that as a nation and just say, look, if you bother Americans, there's no length to which we're going to go to in order to protect our citizens. But instead, as we've done with Russia, as we've done with our economy, we've projected weakness.
Yeah, well, now, one final question on this, and that is, Seton, that, this report, as was referred to by Mark Thiessen, is a partisan hatchet job. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's basically what he was saying. And it was General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA and the NSA, who said that Dianne Feinstein's emotional opposition to CIA interrogations taints the whole report to begin with.
Well, yeah, and I found it hilarious when she finally complained about the government spying, as Kevin pointed out, when it was her computer that was hacked. and I thought it was hilarious from the outset that it wasn't about NSA or IRS or any of these other things. It was about Bush. I mean, she's still researching Bush. I'm envisioning Woodward and Bernstein still looking for the another smoking gun on Nixon.
Kevin, final word, but it definitely is Bush derangement syndrome. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt. And what's interesting, I guess, is a final summation is, these guys are going to act as if this is something that is on the heels, it's on every American's heart and our heads, when in fact, as Seton was pointing out, the government is probably doing lots of things to set us up for much of the same thing. I think it's very disingenuous for them to be talking about this, particularly when they haven't even interviewed people in the CIA. Why don't they just disband the CIA?
Kevin Jackson and Seton Motley, we will reconvene this panel in the next hour, and I thank you both very much for joining us in this hour. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Need I say anything further? Of course, he is the senior legal analyst, judicial analyst for Fox News Channel. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened with, more on this report and also the Mozilla issue on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.